Hello, and welcome to Rise and Unwind. I'm Chris Maloney. Each week, we connect with people across the country to share ideas, inspiration, and simple ways you can enjoy life right in your own neighborhood. On this week's show, we've got that and plenty more.
But we're now looking at how effective these new treatments can be for ameliorating or helping with the symptoms of psychosis.
I'm sure we'll get into some of the changes, but the science is consistent around healthy diets.
So sit back, relax, and let's rise and unwind.
What if you could experience Elvis in a way you've never seen or heard before? A new cinematic event from director Baz Luhrmann brings rare footage, restored performances, and unheard recordings together in something that's not quite a documentary and not just a concert film. It's called Epic, Elvis Presley in Concert. Baz Luhrmann joins us now to talk about his new big screen experience. Baz, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
I'm good, Dan, and I love the way you described it as a cinematic event, because people are having trouble to sort of say what it is. That's what it is. This weekend, 1,900 screens all over the US. Get out and have a cinematic event, because that's what we tried to do. That's what Elvis is.
And during the making of Elvis, you went searching for rumored lost concert footage.
Yeah.
And actually found dozens of boxes that hadn't been seen in decades. What did that discovery like for you?
Oh my God! Literally, we thought we'd find a reel, and we went down to these salt mines in Kansas City where they stored negative. Bang! There's 65 boxes. And 1635, some 8 mil. And Peter Jackson helps us bring it back to us to a level of quality. I mean, just get to the biggest screen you can in your town. It's in every town this weekend. Just get out there and see it, because it is actually, I've seen it enough now. People applaud during it, they dance during it. This is a movie you can really bother the other patrons, bother them with your noise and your energy, because that's what it's for.
And this isn't simply a restored concert film. You described it as almost a cinematic poem. How did you approach shaping Elvis's life story through this dreamlike concert experience?
Well, when I was working with my creative partner in this, John O'Redman, we found this one box, and in it, Elvis is just recorded, unguarded, telling you about his life story. And we said, no talking heads in this. Let's just have Elvis come to you in a dream and tell you his story really unrestricted, and music and sing along and concert moments, and he rocks out in it. Now sonically it's in 5/1. Everyone just says it sounds like it was recorded today, and the audiences are reacting like that. This is the concert, the world tour that Elvis never actually had. He dreamed of having one. He never got outside the US. As we're speaking, he's in 5,000 screens all around the world right now.
And for audiences who think they already kind of know Elvis or absolutely loved your film from 2022, what makes Epic a completely different experience on the big screen?
I go on YouTube and just see what fans are saying. They'll tell you. They're going like, I thought I knew him, and now, but it's his humor. He's so goofy. He's so disarming. And then just you see him creating the music. Like, you see him take a song like Bridge Over Troubled Water, Simon and Garfunkel, and turn it into this gospel powerhouse song. And, he's so unpredictable. And I think people are, even hardcore fans are going like, one guy said, he said it beautifully. He said, this is the film that Elvis always dreamed of making, but 50 years after his death, he's finally in it.
Baz, I want to thank you for joining me today. Epic Elvis Presley in Concert is in theaters now. You can find showtimes and tickets at your local theater and experience Elvis like never before. Baz, it's been a pleasure to have you on here, my friend.
Yes, my man. You're cool.
Some stories don't fade with time, especially when they involve trust, friendship, and betrayal. The new 3-part Hulu docuseries, Friends Like These, The Murder of Skyler Neese, revisits the 2012 disappearance of a West Virginia teenager and the shocking truth that followed. It's a story told through social media, personal interviews, and voices closest to the case. So joining us this morning are director Claire Titley and former FBI agent and polygraph examiner Dr. Rob Ambrosini. Thank you two for being here. How are you?
Thank you. Good. Thank you.
All right, Claire, what stood out to you about this case and what made you feel like it needed to be revisited now, more than a decade later?
I think one of the things that made me that was so kind of shocking about this case when I first kind of looked at it was the fact that it's 2012 and it's quite a unique era in a way for social media, because it was that era where social media was new. It was kind of a new frontier. It was the kind of Wild West though as well. And teenagers were experimenting with it. They were just putting their entire lives online. they didn't have the hindsight that we have now about kind of, what could possibly go wrong. But also it was an era where adults weren't really looking at social media. So nobody was kind of checking up on them. There were no sort of checks and balances. And that makes that generation of teenagers at that kind of time particularly unique. They're almost like the guinea pigs of social media.
And the series used Skyler's own words and social media posts that you said. How did that storytelling change the ways this story unfolds for viewers?
I think it was really important to us to try and give Skyler a voice. We didn't want her to just be a kind of a plot point in a true crime, where she's just the kind of victim and has no voice. We really wanted her to have agency in telling her own story, which is harder than it sounds, obviously when she's gone. But she left behind this incredible sort of archive of tweets, of digital messages, but also her own writing as well. So we worked very closely with her parents to make sure that we could just bring her voice kind of front and center, and that she could at least be a part of telling this story from the inside out. So we interview her friends as well, quite comprehensively, so that we can hear this story from the 16-year-old perspective, including Skyler herself. And
Dr. Ambrosini, you spent 24 years with the FBI. You've conducted thousands of polygraph exams. When you look at this case, what role did interviewing and behavioral analysis play in getting the truth?
Well, interviewing really played a significant role. And long before I became involved in the case, the two young girls, they were interviewed by case agents, state troopers, local police investigators. And during that process, you kind of started seeing this evolution of what really should be fact, right? When things are fact, it doesn't change, right? The truth is the truth, and it's always going to be the truth. But there were indications during these interviews that really did result in kind of like this evolution of their story. And of course, when that happens, the logical investigation is, why is this person changing that story, right? So this case is kind of about the behavior that's exhibited, the ideation, what's going on, what are they thinking, and how are they communicating? And that really speaks to the social media that you have here, which again was kind of in its infancy stage, if you will, compared to what it is now. So really, a lot of it did come down to the really significant interviews that the investigators were doing.
And one of the most unsettling aspects is how normal these friendships appeared on the surface. How does this case reveal about the hidden conflict, especially among teenagers?
I think what we really wanted to do with this series was kind of remind people what it's like to be 16. It's very easy to forget when you become an adult, and put that behind you. But about the fact that when you are that age, your brain behaves in such a way that your friends become much more important than your parents, than your family. Everything is very heightened. Your reasoning is off, if you like. Your idea of consequences, is very different to that of an adult. And when you have that combined with social media that is completely unregulated but unwatched by anybody else, that's where the kind of combination was kind of so dangerous, really, I think, particularly for that generation who didn't have the hindsight that we have now.
And Claire, after someone watches all 3 episodes, what do you hope stays with them?
I hope people do reflect on their own use of sort of social media, on their children, on their family as well, and remember what it's like to be that age. But also, I hope that they come away from this feeling like they know Skyler, and she would have turned 30 just a few weeks ago. So that's a life that she didn't have. And she should have gone to college. She wanted to be a lawyer. There's all this life that didn't happen. And I'd love for people to come away knowing and remembering Skyler as she was.
Hey, I want to thank you two for joining me today. Friends Like These, The Murder of Skyler Neese, with all 3 episodes available to stream now on Hulu. I want to thank you two for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you ever wondered how investigators actually track down predators hiding behind a screen? Online crimes against children are one of the fastest growing threats, and the work to stop them often happens quietly through digital clues, undercover conversations, and long investigations. A new investigative series gives viewers a rare look inside those operations. Detective Tony Godwin leads the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force in North Texas and has worked nearly 7,000 cases over a 30-year career. Detective Godwin joins us now. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
I am great. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
So your team investigates crimes that start online but can have real consequences. What does a typical case look like from the first digital clue to the moment someone is arrested?
I mean, it really evolves rapidly. That's the one thing that I think the audience is going to notice, how quickly things happen and how quickly things escalate. But from the moment we put ourselves in this situation in an undercover capacity and the elements of the crime are met, which doesn't take long at all, like it's so fast and so quick, then it takes me and my entire team to put together all the steps necessary, legal process, and put all the affirmative links back together to figure out where this person is, who this person is, and then get ready for a takedown and hopefully a good arrest.
In the series, we see undercover operations where investigators pose as minors online. What goes into building those cases and making sure the evidence holds up in court?
I mean, people need to remember that everything that we do in an undercover capacity is based on what we know has happened to a real child. Unfortunately, children are exploited every single day online. And as a result, those reports get made and sent to us, and those are called reactive cases. So we know where they go. We know how they're talking. We know what they're doing, and we know what's happening to them. So we base everything we do in the undercover world just like that. We just put ourselves out there. Once it happens, once the communications start, which does not take long at all. And then once those elements go is when we move forward with all the legal process to get things tied together in a nice big bow on top of it, and hopefully ends with a great arrest and a successful prosecution.
And you've worked nearly 7,000 cases during your career. How has the way predators online changed over the years?
Well, we saw a big increase during the COVID time. I will tell you that we were forcing our children online and into school environments in an online capacity. And so we were just generally pushing everybody online because of our COVID scare and the things that were going around that. And so at the end of the day, it's like a pleasure paradise playground for these predatory types who are already in these platforms and doing what they're doing. And so they had a target-rich environment in front of them. So it has increased. And so also awareness has increased over time, but I'm hopeful it's going to increase even more with the show that's come out on A&E, because we want that intentionality. We want people to know. We want to raise the awareness level of the average person who maybe has some knowledge of this, but doesn't really understand the gravity of what it is. And you're going to see this highlighted in the show. Obviously, it ends with a nice high five moment when we put people in cuffs and we arrest them. And that's a very satisfying, rewarding part of the process.
And for parents that might be watching this at home, what are some of the warning signs that a child might be interacting with someone dangerous online?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First and foremost, I would say pay attention to the behavior changes. You know your child better than anybody. So if you have a child who's an A student that comes down to a C or a D student, then at the end of the day, you know something's going on. Maybe their friend group has changed a little bit. Maybe they're normally very outgoing, but all of a sudden they're really introverted. That could be a red flag that something's going on. Secondly, I would say know how to access your kid's device. Know the passcodes. Know the platforms they go to. Know that some of the platforms have their own passcodes that might be different from the code to get into the phone. Educate yourself about what they're doing and how they're doing it. Being intentional over time, not a one-time deal. This isn't I get to go look one time and then back out of it. If you need to use monitoring software to help with that, then do that. I'm a big proponent of that. But you need to be very intentional. You need to lean in. You need to have constructive, age-appropriate conversations with your kiddo so that at the end of the day, if something does happen, that child's going to come to you or a trusted adult and say, hey, I'm in a pickle, I've done something, or this is what's happened, I need some help. And you already have a path of what's going to happen to get that child back on a good restorative path.
And the show gives viewers a behind-the-scenes look at your task force and the work that you do every day. What do you hope people understand better after watching these investigations play out?
I mean, take into account, there's a little bit of shock and a little bit of awe. Most people are going to notice because after the first show came out last week, my phone almost melted with all these comments and questions about how graphic these predators are and how quickly things escalate. And that is reality. And so I think they're going to take away that, but I think they're also going to have this awareness level that has just increased exponentially. I think they're going to learn from some takeaways that are going to be highlighted on the show, that what they can do and what if something has happened, what if something's already happened. There's a lot of resources that are available to them And I think they're going to enjoy the entertainment side of it, which is the arrest or the takedown. Those are all really great moments. And I'm really happy to be a part of the program with A&E.
Detective Godwin, I want to thank you for joining me today. You can watch Predator Hunters Thursdays on A&E, and episodes are also available to stream on the A&E app and ANETV.com. Detective Tony Godwin, I really want to thank you for joining us today.
I really appreciate your time. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience. Thank you so much.
Fans of When Calls the Heart are finally getting the backstory, and it's a pretty big one. Hope Valley 1874 is now streaming, taking us to the very beginning of the town and the people who pretty much built it. We're joined by Bethany Joy Lenz and Jill Hennessy, who play two of the women at the center of it all. And it's great to have you two here. How are you?
Hi, so great to be here.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
No worries. I've heard a lot about this. A lot of my fans, or a lot of the people watching, are fans of the show. And for people that do already or are already fans of this world, what's different about seeing Hope Valley kind of at the way beginning?
Oh man, I think it's going to be so incredible. I think for people to be able to see this town being built from the ground up. It's something. It's kind of like when you meet a new friend, or fall in love. The more that you find out about the person that you're in love with, you go to meet their family, you go and meet their siblings, you go sit there with their mom and go through the family photo book. Like, that's what we're giving you guys a chance to do as fans of When Calls the Heart. And we really hope to do it justice.
And Bethany, your character, Rebecca, is coming into the frontier life from pretty much Chicago life. What kind of adjustment is she dealing with early on?
Well, there are several adjustments. The first being that she's been recently widowed. So trying to figure out emotionally where to place her grief while also being in these sort of emergency situation of needing to get her daughter to a safe place. And we don't know exactly why yet. Well, we know, but you're going to find out. And she's got to get across the frontier and get her daughter into a safe place in Canada. So she doesn't have a lot of time for emotional processing. And that's kind of where Hattie Quinn comes in. Jill's character, it opens up once Rebecca lands. Hattie becomes a source of stability and trust for Rebecca to actually start to learn how to soften and open up.
And yeah, she was saying, Jill, Hattie's already part of this community. How would you describe her role in shaping what Hope Valley becomes?
Wow. Well, she's Hattie Quinn runs the Trading Post, and she originally came out with her husband and very small girl at the beginning. And now her daughter is around 20 years old, but she recently lost her husband. So now she's running this Trading Post by herself with her daughter. And she is sort of the glue that holds the community together. And I think she runs it with a great sense of humor and incredible, direct, no nonsense kind of spirit, and has great connections with the whole community. But then Rebecca starts walking into town with her daughter, riding in a covered wagon. And I think Hattie identifies a woman who's very courageous and intelligent and is kind of haunted by something, and Hattie's not sure what is haunting Rebecca, but I think she also identifies a kindred spirit that she might become friends with. And I think Rebecca sort of opens Hattie up to how lonely she really feels, and a lot of feelings she's been trying to suppress just so she can get through day to day, because that's what this whole show is about. It's just these characters trying to survive every single day.
Hey, horses be walking, so it's not that big. You're not too far off.
Exactly.
All right, when people start watching now, what do you think is going to be like getting them hooked and keep them coming back each and every week?
The characters. I mean, the setting is amazing, but it's also something that they've seen before, maybe not as broken down, but we are using the When Calls the Heart sets. There are a few locations that will be new for When Calls fans. And for people who haven't watched When Calls the Heart, you don't need to. You can still jump right in and you won't miss a beat. But I would say the relationships of who the characters are there's something for everyone.
Hey, I want to thank you two for joining me today. Hope Valley 1874 is streaming now on Hallmark Plus with new episodes dropping every Thursday. You can jump in anytime to catch up. Thank you two for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We tend to think of Alzheimer's as memory loss, but for a lot of families, the bigger challenge can be the behavioral changes that come along with it. Things like hallucinations, confusion, even fear, and they can show up in ways people aren't expecting. Today we have Dr. George Grossberg here with us to walk us through what it looks like and where families can find some real support. It's good to have you here, Dr. Grossberg. How are you?
Great to be with you from the state of Florida, where you probably have more seniors than any state of the union, percentage-wise.
And that's exactly why we have you here, Dr. Grossberg. So what do those behavioral symptoms actually look like day to day for somebody that does have Alzheimer's?
Yeah, so that's important to point out, as you, I think, mentioned earlier, is that Alzheimer's disease is not just a disease of memory and cognition, but behavioral, or what we call neuropsychiatric symptoms, are extremely common and maybe even more distressing to patients and families than memory and cognitive symptoms. And the ones that we worry about would be things like irritability or agitation or mood change or lack of motivation. But our focus today is on one of the most distressing symptoms, and that's psychosis in Alzheimer's disease, where people actually can hallucinate. They can respond to things that aren't there. They can see things, they can hear things, which is very distressing. Or they may have like paranoia or fearfulness or suspicion, or they might feel that their family's trying to harm them instead of maybe trying to help them. These are called psychotic symptoms in Alzheimer's disease. They're extremely common and they're quite distressing.
So how common is this, and what tends to catch families off guard the most?
Yeah, so about half of individuals sometime during the course of the disease will develop psychotic symptoms. They can be of varying intensity. Of course, what the families respond to the most is when there are things like accusatory behaviors, or when the person is talking to someone who isn't there and it's becoming very distressing, kind of all-encompassing to the point where they can't get them to focus on anything else. That's when they turn to their healthcare provider or maybe to clinical trials where new medicines are being developed for help.
So what kind of support is out there for caregivers dealing with these changes?
Yeah, so there's obviously support from your primary healthcare provider. There are community organizations like the Alzheimer's Association. And then, of course, maybe volunteering for a clinical trial. And there are clinical trials throughout the area, throughout the Tampa and Florida region. In fact, I think Florida has more sites for promising treatments for psychosis and Alzheimer's disease than any state in the union. And these sites don't just provide these, new treatments that are being developed, but they also provide information, they provide support, they tell you about community resources that can be helpful in managing a loved one with psychosis and Alzheimer's disease.
You mentioned clinical trials or clinical research. Why does it matter so much right now?
Yeah, so clinical trials are clinical research, and it's the only way that we can get medications approved by the Food and Drug. The current state of the art as far as clinical research or clinical trials for psychosis and Alzheimer's disease is that we're moving closer and closer toward approval of a significant therapy that might be very helpful. We are beyond the safety studies. Yes, we monitor safety throughout in every trial, but we're now looking at how effective these new treatments can be for ameliorating or helping with the symptoms of psychosis in Alzheimer's disease.
So how can you tell if your family member might be a good fit for a clinical trial?
So obviously the first thing just is to suspect that there might be an issue, is to realize that these behavioral or neuropsychiatric symptoms are part of the disease. It doesn't mean the loved one is going crazy. It's part of Alzheimer's disease. To bring that to the attention of your primary healthcare provider so that you can go from there to make sure there isn't something else going on medically or otherwise, and then to become aware of resources. And we'll share a website in a moment about how to learn more about psychosis and Alzheimer's disease and find a clinical trial site near you.
And if they do move forward as part of a trial, what does that experience typically look like?
A lot of attention. You need a dedicated family to bring the patient, obviously, to monitor for any side effects, monitor for approval. But you get a lot of benefits because the visits, whether it's a telephone visit, whether it's a visit to the clinical trial site, they give a lot of information, a lot of support. It's very warm and fuzzy, as I call it. And I think it really helped the family to not feel alone, that they're together with the healthcare experts that are trying to help them to provide appropriate therapy for their loved one.
We're almost out of time, Dr. Grossberg. If somebody out there is interested, where should they go if they want to learn more or maybe explore participating in one of these clinical trials?
To explore participating, to learn more, navigating ALZ, all one word, navigatingalz.com.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Grossberg.
Thank you.
A lot of us try to eat better, but it's not always clear what actually makes a difference. The American Heart Association just released an updated guidance for 2026, focusing on simple changes that can improve long-term health. Joining us today is Dr. Amit Kara, who helps shape the recommendations. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, doctor, can you break down the new 2026 dietary guidance and what people should know right away?
Absolutely. Listen, it's important to update the guidance every 5 years. Science changes. And so we really spent the part of this really reviewing what's new and what's changed. And importantly, a lot of it stays the same. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the changes, but the science is consistent around healthy diets. And one of the things we really want to emphasize is realizing that, heart disease, the foundation is in childhood. And so we really need to start early with this heart healthy guidance and carry that throughout our life.
Okay. What are some of the biggest updates and changes compared to past guidance?
Yeah. Back to what is the same, vegetables and fruits, we start there. Whole grains, also important. Limiting added sugars. But some of the updates, something we really wanted to focus on was ultra processed foods. We appreciate that when we all go to the grocery store, about 70% of the foods that we're seeing are ultra processed. And those aren't necessarily healthy. And so we're saying, how can we minimize those? And also with protein, how do we make healthy choices and shift towards more plant-based sources like beans, nuts, legumes, and lentils?
So how do we make these recommendations fit into our real life, whether we're eating at home or on the go?
Well, yeah, first is being intentional about it, because we have more control when we're eating at home and what we're choosing. But when we go to the grocery store, what are we deciding to purchase and bring home? When we're at work, when we're at school, how are we intentional about this and make it easier for us to eat healthy? So we really need to be thinking about this and making a plan towards that. I think that's the way that we do it.
So let's keep it simple. What are some of the things people can start doing today to improve their heart health?
I like what you said, simple. It is not hard. First is move more. Get up and move. 150 minutes a week of walking is the start. And then when it comes to eating well, listen, if you take your plate and fill half of it with vegetables and fruits, you're almost all the way there. And then finally, let's do it together with families and coworkers. How do we support each other and help each other in this journey towards health?
I love it. Now, where can people go to learn more?
Well, there's a great website, heart.org/healthy diet. That has some great information.
Thank you so much, doctor, for joining us this morning and giving us all this helpful information. You have a good day.
Thank you.
That's it for Rise and Unwind. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to learn more about the show, visit our website at riseunwindtv.com. And for behind-the-scene moments and celebrity interviews, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rise Unwind. You can also find our full episodes on YouTube under the same name at Rise Unwind. Until next week, I'm Chris Maloney. Thanks for spending a little time with us on Rise and Unwind.